Hey, this is Steven from LegitTechTutorials, back with Java Part 2 of Beginning Java. So we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to slow it down a little more and talk a little bit more about some more information and knowledge as far as what we're doing here. So Java is a programming language that was, that was brought about by Oracle. Computer science and programming is basically communicating with a computer using a language in order to get a computer to do something that we want it to do. Now, what a computer language is it's something in English that we use through one of these IDEs or compilers, which is basically Eclipse, to translate from English to computer language, something like hexadecimal or binary. Now, basically what we're going to do here is we are going to expand on this. So basically we use something that is already written, things like this, and we could use that to expand and do something custom, right? So a programming language out of the box has stuff laid out to do basic things that usually are already repetitive. Already and should just be there. So things like this output and other primitives that we're going to go over are there. So we're going to expand on this and have it do custom things that we want it to do that aren't currently written, as well as we could look at other people's work and have that in ours as well. And that's basically what it is. It's what we call a library, right, of things that are already written and things that will be written. So let's go into what we have here. So this is continuing off from our last video, and the previous knowledge will expand on that. Of course, you don't really need to know that. Programs work whether you know that or not, and I'm going to try to tell you what you need to know and what you don't need to know, and what the and try to keep it as basic as possible. So we're going to go into some more knowledge that your program will work whether you know this knowledge or not. I'm just telling you this knowledge just so it's easier to communicate between human to human, not necessarily from human to machine, because the machine doesn't care whether you know what any of these definitions are or not. But when you get an error like something down here, it will help to know that you know what this stuff is, so you can know and find it easier than if you didn't. Okay, so let's go into this. So here you see the public class. So public means that everything could see it, which we'll go in later, and you see that here. Basically, test matches here, and we'll go over what a class is later. And this is where the class area is. We have nothing in the class area. And here we have the public static void main. This main is where everything happens. This is where everything is run down here at the bottom. And I'll run this again really quick so you can see what we were looking at. And that was what we saw from the last video. And so here we have something called a call, which is basically running this here, which we'll go over later. Don't even worry about that. We're not going to touch on that till a little bit later, and you're not going to really know what that is till later. So here we have what we call primitives, which is basically what we call numbers or stuff that means something else, right? So here we have a solid integer. So this is integer, which is a number, which is 1. So I'm going to explain how this is set up. Don't think this is how it's set up right now. Right now I just have this saying that what this is, but I'll explain what's going on here later. So we have an integer, which is basically integer is a number, and a number without any decimal points in it. So here it's a solid number. And then we have what you see here, which is a string which is something like your name, and then you basically have to show that what's in a string, you do the quotation marks. For if you don't have the quotation marks, number one, it's going to give you an error, which is in red. You see red is error. But basically, when you put the quotation marks around it, you're saying, I want only what's in the quotation marks. Because otherwise, everything else would be a string, right? It could mistake this for a string or this for a string. But it's like, no, whatever I have inside the quotation marks is what I want. And then a string is, of course, just a long piece of characters. You know, something like Twitter, where it says you can only have a certain 300 or whatever, 300 characters, which is a letter, a number, and a space. So those are characters, which you see here like a J, right? And then we have something like double, which is basically a number, but it has a decimal point in it. But it could also be a solid number and have more space. Basically, use it if you want more space, or if you have a decimal number. Most of the time, we'll use this because we want that precision point. And of course, it's very precise. It could go very far down, right? But right now, we just have it here. Okay, so now, and I was going to make sure I talk about the semicolon. So here, the semicolon is basically saying the computer is listening from here to here. When it's reading through, when you hit this button and you say you want to run it, it will read this from here to here. And then when you hit this, you say, okay, I'm done talking to you, do it. And then look for the next instruction. So it's reading, 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 reading. Okay, done, I'm doing it. Then reading, 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 done, doing it, right? So usually what will happen is you only have this. You only have one call. So this is a call, still a call, right? You're setting something up, and then you say do it, call, do it, call, do it. Because if you get rid of it, it'll throw an error. And up here you don't need it, and up here you don't need it. I'll go over that later. But and then we're gonna go over operators. So operators you're all pretty familiar with are basic math operators such as addition, subtraction. Multiplication is not the x, because the x is just a character, right? It could be anywhere, right? So in this case it's 8, and then you hit shift, and then you hit 8, and you get the asterisk, right, for multiplication. And then in this case you hold shift and hit 5. It gives you the percent sign, and that's remainder, which we'll go over a lot later. This isn't really too much in math, but it's really used in computer science and programming. So we'll go over that as well. So I just want to write this. There's a lot more than this, and I'll show you more later. But right now, let's go into how to do some operators in today's first, I guess, lesson, hands-on. So now I'm going to show also what this is here. So what we have is we're going to create int number 1 equals 5, and see, everything's good. Now just because this is underlined here, that means that we're not doing anything with it. So it's like, why are you wasting my time? You're not even using this. So don't worry about that. So basically what's happening here, we can call this num1. So this is called a identifier or declaration, right? So this is its name. This is what we're referring it to. So for example, your name, right? We don't call you human, we call you, Jack or whatever. So this is like Jack, and Jack is of type, let's just make this a little more understandable. For baseball, I guess. So let's say like something like this. So we have Jack. So Jack is what we're going to be calling him. That's his name, and he is of type human. What did he do? He hit a home run. So that's kind of how it is. So it's identifier type, and value. So in this case, we're going to do int num1 equals 1 or 5. Then we're going to have int num2 equals 6. And then we're going to have a third number, int num3, and then we're going to do something with it. We're going to just say equals 0, right? Or there's multiple ways of doing this. I'll show you here in a second. So now that we already declared it, it already knows that it's an integer. I could type in num3 and we're going to do num3 equals, we're going to do an equation. So num3 equals num1 plus num2. And then we're going to do the system.out.println, and we're going to do num3. Now, we're just going to see what it says, and I'll explain what we're doing here in a second. See, it says 11. Now, is 6 plus 5 11? Yes, it is. So basically what it's doing here is I'm saying number 3, which we declared here is 0, is going to be number 1 here plus number 2. So you're telling it that identifier, and it looks, and it's like, okay, here's number 1. What's stored in it for its value? 5. So it replaces this with a 5. And it goes number 2, looks for number 2, looks at the value 6, and replaces this with a 6. Right? I mean, you also do this a lot with in math. These are variables, right? These are variables that are undefined until you find out their value. So here, and now we're setting the value here. So it's a lot of the equations in math when you say t, what does t equal when t is 6 or whatever. So you plug that in for t, right? In this case, the same thing here. So this is what we got. Now, if we do something else, like let's say a string name1 equals part1, and string name2 equals, oh, sorry about that. See how I totally forgot about that there? I need to see, if you forget the colons, it'll throw an error, and then it'll let you know that it's wrong. Eclipse is a very smart program. Now we could even do this here, and we're gonna go string name3 equals name1 plus name2. And we're going to do another system.out.println name3. And then we're going to run that. And it adds those two together. Now, as you see, it doesn't add a space. If you want a space, just add a space at the end of this guy. And now it's got a space. So, same thing like this one here. We're adding together primitives. So we're adding a primitives with an operator, in this case addition. I actually never tried subtraction. I don't know what would happen if you try to do subtraction here. I think it would freak out. I never even tried it because I don't know why you would want to do that. I mean, there might be some cases, but in this case it's the same thing. If you do the multiplication, if you do the division, if you do the remainder, it'll all do the, it'll all work out to what it actually is correctly. Here it might not. Because as you see, even though you do a string, it's not actually a primitive, but it's very well used. It's basically used as a primitive, but in this case, it is actually a extension. Same thing with C. Like string doesn't exist in C, only characters exist. Because this is a primitive, this is a primitive, this is a primitive. Everything in purple is kind of like taken, right? You can't use that in your names or anything like that. It's reserved, they call it, reserved. So this is not necessarily, so this is different. This was written differently. So here we see we did some operators, and we provided some output to the user of what's going on. Now this is the basis around all programming. So all programming, you will be doing some sort of input and some sort of input, some sort of calculation, and some sort of output, right? That's basically what it is, right? You start off, you say, I want to do a program that finds out this huge calculation, and here's the one variable that you need. Now do the calculation and then output me the answer. That's basically what programming is for the most part with that. So this here is a good start. We have here we have primitives, and then we're doing operators and then returning out. And you could also mess around with this and see what you get. Here, as you can see, we have no problems, no errors in here. Everything's really clean. And also, I noticed I also forgot to mention, these are comments. So it doesn't actually do what are in the comments. These are 2 forward slashes. So this is a comment, this is a comment. Everything in green are comments. And the reason why you do it in comment is because you don't want to actually do this. Because if I, for example, got rid of these 2 comments and ran this, oh hey, you got errors all over the place. So you comment that out. And that's also how you could really keep yourself from getting lost. You would add comments in there. I'll teach you how to lay out your code a lot as we continue in the next video. So this is gonna be probably the conclusion of this video here, and we're going to talk more about Java in our next video. And so this is the conclusion of Java 2, Beginning Java. Please subscribe for more videos like this one, and stay tuned for the next Java video. Thank you for watching.